It's called Summer Learning Loss. And as the school year gets underway, parents, teachers, and students are just now discovering how much summer vacation may have sent some students to the back of the class. Janice Aurini is a professor in the Department of Sociology and Legal Studies at the University of Waterloo. She has just published one of the first large-scale studies on how this plays out for Canadian students, and Professor Aurini joins us now. Nice to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, before you got into this, other jurisdictions elsewhere in the world started to study it, so I want to start there.
Okay.
When researchers outside of Canada looked at the impact of summer vacation on, what students retained when they came back the following year, what did they find?
Well, the findings were not good. One of the largest studies out of Baltimore, and they've been tracking kids for about 25 years, looking at summer learning losses. And what they found is that over time, just summer learning losses and gains can count for a large proportion of the achievement gap, particularly between lower and higher socioeconomic children. And so that gap, not what's happening in the school year, but that summer learning loss can account for things like who graduates from high school, which kids are in the preparatory courses for college and university, and then who eventually goes on to post-secondary.
Since the kids are all off for the same 2 months,
right,
there have to be, I guess, a variety of explanations as to why some do okay and some do not.
That's right.
Help us out with that.
Well, some people refer to it as Faucet Theory. And so, you think about during the school year, the faucets turn wide open and all the resources are flowing. Kids get access to literacy and numeracy. There's recreation. So I should say, one of the things that the American research has also found is that not only do kids lose, or vulnerable kids lose literacy and numeracy, but they're also more susceptible to weight gain over the summer. And so, we think about school, they structure that learning time, they structure recreation time, kids get access to a weekly trip to the library, music classes, but in the summertime, at least for some kids, that faucet is turned off.
Which kids?
Usually kids from lower socioeconomic backgrounds, so the most vulnerable kids, where parents have lower levels of education and income.
So if you have higher education, higher income, you send your kids off to summer camp or any number of different programs during the summer that sort of keeps the faucet going a little bit?
That's right, and professional parents or parents with higher incomes usually have more flexible schedules, so they can do things like take their kids to a vacation or up at the family cottage and those kinds of things.
Those American studies, again, just before we start talking about your work, I'm trying to gauge how much education you would actually lose by being off in the summer and having that faucet sort of turned down or off altogether.
Yeah, well, it's pretty significant, actually. In my own study, as well as American research, it can be upwards of 5 months of literacy or numeracy.
5 months?
5 months.
So it's pretty half the year down the drain.
That's right. But remember, while some kids are losing, other kids are gaining. So you can imagine that in September, you've got some children who are 3, 4, or 5 months behind, other kids who are 2 or 3 months ahead, and that can account for a significant amount of the actual achievement gap.
So if you add how much behind plus how much ahead,
absolutely,
maybe a whole year at some
That's
point.
Right, absolutely, in the most extreme sense, yes.
Right. Okay, so all of that is going on outside Canada, then you decide you wanted to do your research on the Canadian situation. How did you begin to want to do that?
Well, we were fortunate enough to rub shoulders with some of the colleagues who were conducting the US studies, and we became really interested in what was happening. And we didn't really know a whole lot about summer setback in a Canadian context. And we suspected that because of the differences in how we fund schools, that there may be differences. That is, we may find less summer learning losses than in the US. So that's where it sort of started. But the big question that we also wanted to answer is, where do achievement gaps come from? How much of it is attributed to the summer versus the school year?
What did you find out about whether or not our summer learning losses are as significant as those in the United States?
They're a little bit more muted, but again, the news is not good. We found that, again, at the extreme ends, some kids were gaining up to 3 months, other kids were losing up to 3 months. So again, 6-month gap at the beginning of the school year. But on average, kids, particularly kids from more sort of vulnerable home life settings, were losing about 1 to 2 months. And again, middle class and upper middle class children were gaining. So pretty significant loss.
So what are we in the province of Ontario doing about this?
We are actually doing something really good. We partnered with the Ontario Ministry of Education, Scott Davies, my co-investor, and I, and what we did is we started to work with the ministry and evaluate a brand new initiative about 4 or 5 years ago. And currently right now in the province, every single school board offers a very intensive literacy and numeracy programs for kids. They're only 2 or 3 weeks. And
This is over the summer.
Over the summer. And again, check out your local school board. There's one probably in your community. What's great about them is that they're free and they're staffed by certified teachers. And they also bring in all kinds of other resources for kids. And so what we did is we tested kids in June and September to try to bracket that learning that happens over the summer. And what we found is that the kids who attended the programs were far better off when they came back to school in September. So kids who otherwise had all the characteristics that we would predict would have lost. Either they came back to school where they left off in June, and in some cases, the most positive cases, they actually caught up a bit to their more advantaged classmates.
So, and these would all be people in lower socioeconomic categories that you studied?
Well, they tended to target or focus the programs in those types of neighborhoods. But the beauty of these programs is that anyone could attend. So certainly the school made a lot of effort to target students who they thought could most benefit from a summer program. But really anyone who at this program is targeted at kids in grade 1, 2, and 3 could come.
I am dying to know how a parent convinces a student/child over the summer not to hang out with kids at the mall, or not to go to summer camp, or not to go to day camp, or not to go to Ontario Place, or whatever the myriad things they do over the summer, but instead go to school for 2 or 3 more weeks.
Well, I think the fact that it's targeted at younger children, you can parents can really
crack the whip.
Pretty much. But also, I think they're quite smart that this is not just like summer school. What we're doing, at least in the province of Ontario, is that they've really made it like a summer camp. So the kids really think, I mean, yes, there's intensive literacy and numeracy focus, but there's a whole recreation component to these programs. So kids, and you remember, these are kids who otherwise could not have afforded, or their parents could not afford to send them to any kind of high quality camp of any sort. These kids actually had a wonderful experience and learned probably without even realizing it.
Let's talk for a moment about stigma, because I know, man, you tell me if it's different now. I know when I was a kid, if I ever found out any of my buddies were going to summer school, that was really grounds for teasing the hell out of them, because that showed that they were either slow or falling behind or whatever. Is there any stigma attached to attending these programs?
No, in fact, a lot of these programs have waiting lists. Once the word got out in the communities and the kids had a great time and parents saw that the positive outcome from these programs, they recognized, and the teachers recognized, that the kids were able to enter school in September and really hit the ground running. And they notice differences in terms of kids' confidence. I mean, if kids at that age don't see themselves as a reader, they don't identify as a learner and good at school.
What age are we talking?
We're talking young kids by grade 2 or 3. I mean, if kids, and this is somebody else's term, not my own, but if they're not able to transition from reading, learning to read to reading to learn, you've lost them. And that happens during that critical time period in grade 2 and 3. So as a consequence, these programs are really popular and people want to go because their friends are going.
They do. Okay, so that was going to be my next question, which is, do you ever have to worry about them not showing up?
Yeah. Well, we found that attendance is a big issue, and that was one of the things that we tracked. I mean, obviously, if you're not showing up, you're not going to benefit from the program. So again, we made a lot of effort, and the schools made a lot of effort to make sure that kids were attending the program. Again, it's only 2 or 3 weeks. So
if everybody, and I assume everybody to some extent, whether you're from a high socioeconomic bracket or from a lower one, everybody experiences, if you don't go to school for 2 straight months, you're going to experience some kind of summer learning loss.
I experienced summer learning loss.
Right, okay, there you go. And you're what are you, a PhD?
Yes.
You're a PhD, so there you go. Somebody's going to make the argument that we should just make school 12 months of the year, or at least 11 and a half or something like that. Is that a good idea?
I don't think so, and I don't think we should get rid of summer vacation, and I'm not just saying that because I think my children would disown me. But no, I think in the case, I think everything in moderation, and I think that the program that I had the privilege of being a part of and evaluating shows that even just a 2 or 3 week boost, like a tune-up, if you will, can really make a difference. And so again, I don't think we have to get rid of summer vacation at this point.
The tune-up, I presume, should be at the end of the summer as opposed to at the beginning? Does that make more sense?
It would make more sense. We didn't find any difference. Programs varied in terms of whether they were offered in July and August. So,
would parents blanch at this idea of trying to send kids to school, throughout the whole school year?
I think so. I mean, certainly full year schooling or 12-month calendar has happened in places like California, for example, and Nevada. And surprisingly, they're not that popular with parents for all sorts of reasons. So just to be clear, it's not about adding more school days. It's just distributing the vacation throughout the year versus a sort of a 2-month block. And in those cases, what they found is, surprisingly, that it didn't actually improve achievement gains for whatever reason. There's a lot of theories about why that might be the case in terms of just it not being very popular with getting high quality teachers and so forth. But it also was quite evident in the US research that it's very hard for two parents to work in those situations. I mean, you can imagine if you've got kids at different schools and the vacation is different.
It's complicated.
It gets very complicated for anyone who's ever tried to arrange for childcare.
Yeah, and if I've heard this once, I've heard it 1,000 times, that we're running a school system essentially today based on an agrarian calendar of 150 years ago, where kids needed the summer off so they could go into the fields and help bring in the crops. Well, that's clearly not the case for 99% of the students who are now in schools. So, in some respects, does it make sense to continue to operate the school calendar year with these 2 months off in the summer, knowing what the summer learning losses are going to be for pretty much everybody?
I know. I mean, and that's a really fair question. And again, I guess I would just go back with, I don't think we need to get rid of summer vacation at this point. But I do think that in Ontario, as well as other provinces in Canada, that we should be offering some kind of intervention. And again, I think for the summertime, one of the benefits of not having to just worry about all the things that schools do during the regular school day, that in the summer, teachers were able to really provide a really targeted and focused intervention that I think benefited kids, again, without all the other stuff that they have to do. And the other benefit about having something in the summer is that they were able to actually encourage parents to participate in the programs. And these are parents who may not have ever stepped into the classroom before. So there were there's quantitative benefits to these programs, but there's also some nice qualitative or secondary benefits.
I wonder whether or not, because we've seen this in other situations as well, where often students who come from homes where the parents are not literate, or maybe English is a second language or something, don't necessarily get that reinforcement to be as academic as they can be. Can you have summer tune-up programs where the parents go as well?
Well, I think there's a real benefit. Even if the parents still struggle with their own literacy or numeracy, the benefits of having a parent in the classroom, and kids really just shine when mom or dad or a grandparent is in the classroom. And so there were those benefits of having parents just come and even just participate in a very small way in a read-along, for example, or some kind of small activity. Kids, one of the things that we know is that things like parental expectation really do predict academic outcomes. So if parents are then participating and involved in school, even in a really small way, it can be really a boost to kids' academic achievement.
So it really is a thing when we can doom our kids with too low expectations of their academic achievement.
Absolutely.
So we got to set the standards high and then make sure they've hit them.
That's right, absolutely.
Got it. Most interesting. Janice Aurini, University of Waterloo, thanks so much for coming into TVO and helping us out with this tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.